Did you know that Wilt Chamberlain was almost drafted by the Celtics? For anyone who knows about the legendary rivalry between Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, this idea may sound a little ridiculous at first, but there is historical evidence that proves that it could have very well become a reality. In my opinion, it's the most underrated what-if in NBA history. Let's rewind back to 1954. At this time, a 17-year-old Wilt Chamberlain is playing basketball at Overbrook High School. The team had just finished their season with a 19-0 record and had won the city title by beating South Catholic 74-50. It was around this time that Wilt was spotted by Haskell Cohen, the NBA's public relations director from 1950 to 69. Impressed with what he saw, Cohen decided to get Chamberlain a summer job as a bellhop at Kutcher's Hotel and Country Club, located in the Catskills Mountains of New York. That may sound a little weird at first, but this was actually a huge opportunity for Chamberlain. You see, one of the best ways for young players in the 50s to get exposure was to get a summer job at a resort that had a team. These hotels were made up of promising young players, both from high school and those who were already playing in college. After the players finished their shifts, they would compete in games against other hotels. George Mikan worked and played at Klein's Hillside in Parksville. Bob Cousy was a summer waiter at Tamarack Lodge, and Kutcher's was probably the most prestigious of the bunch, since guys like Cliff Hagan, Frank Ramsey, Chuck Cooper, and Cy Green all played there. So, the 6'11", 17-year-old Chamberlain was put to work. Just like with his later life, Wilt has a ton of crazy stories working at this hotel that aren't related to basketball. According to Cohen, one time he got a flat tire at the hotel, but he had no jack to change it, so Chamberlain simply lifted the car up so the tire could be fixed. Wilt also apparently carried 6 full suitcases up 3 flights of stairs, all at once. The coach of Chamberlain's summer basketball team just so happened to be the legendary Red Auerbach, who had become both the Celtics head coach and executive in 1950. There was some slight tension between the two at first. As we know, Auerbach was all about a team-first mentality when it came to basketball, whereas Wilt was a larger-than-life figure. As Auerbach later said about the young Wilt, he was never humble. He was confident. He was a giant among men, and he knew he would get bigger and stronger. In the words of Wilt Chamberlain, looking back on it, I think maybe it was my attitude that first touched off Auerbach. You know, I wasn't exactly the most modest kid in town, and I had a lot of moves for a high school freshie playing with the big boys, and when Red would call practice, he would sort of talk to me in that voice that catches you right here, right between the ribs. He especially didn't like the way I played defense. Don't you think, Chamberlain, Red would growl, that it might be sort of a good idea to defense your man from in front of him instead of behind him? What the hell are you doing back there? But I went on defending the guys from behind, reaching around with my arms to get the ball, waiting to fall on them when they wheeled around to shoot. Eventually, Wilt's team was going to play a game against Shawanaga Lodge. In Red's mind, he thought this would be an opportunity to teach Chamberlain a lesson in humility. Shawanaga Lodge had B.H. Bourne on the team, an All-American from the University of Kansas. Red told Wilt that Bourne is going to make chopped chicken liver out of you. According to Chamberlain, this is what happened next. At the halftime break, I had scored 30-some points, and Bourne had scored exactly 2, and I came ambling back into the dressing room and flopped myself down on the training table and folded my arms behind my head. I was whistling, you know, doo-day-doo-day-doo, and sort of looking sidewise at old Red, while he looked back at me with a steely stare. Eventually, Auerbach and Chamberlain did become closer. Chamberlain began to allow Red to coach him, instead of just doing his own thing. He started playing defense the way Red wanted him to, and Wilt would play this same style of defense for the rest of his playing days. When Red would play poker at the hotel, it was Chamberlain who served him drinks and cigars. Red could tell Wilt was special, so he finally decided to ask him, "Why don't you go to Harvard, kid, and then I'll be able to pick you off in the territorial draft for the Celtics?" You see, from 1950 to 1966, the NBA had a territorial pick rule, which allowed any team to forfeit their first-round pick and instead take any college player from within 50 miles of their home arena. The rule was intended to help drum up support for NBA teams by allowing popular college stars to stay local, because at this point, the NBA was still very young, and not as popular as the college game. To give an example of a territorial pick, Oscar Robertson played for Cincinnati in college, and ended up playing for the Cincinnati Royals in the NBA. Obviously, Harvard is located just a few minutes outside of Boston, and Red was telling Wilt that he could get him into the school. It sounds too good to be true. Wilt must have thought so too, because he refused Red's offer, and instead decided to play basketball at Kansas. But if Chamberlain had said yes to Red, then that means the Celtics could have drafted him in 1959. Some people don't know this, but Bill Russell was not actually drafted by the team. Russell was selected by the St. Louis Hawks in the 1956 draft. Auerbach had already used his territorial pick that same draft to get Tom Heinsohn. So, in order to get Russell, he decided to send Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan to the Hawks. But if Red knows that he has Chamberlain waiting in the wings, then why would he ever trade for Russell in the first place? If Chamberlain is now a member of the Boston Celtics, how much of NBA history has changed? What team does Bill Russell end up on now? Even though he was drafted by the Hawks, the team had no interest in keeping him for racist reasons. So where does Russell end up? The Lakers? The Knicks? The Pistons? The Warriors? How does the Celtics strategy change with Wilt at center? Do they win more or less championships? Do they end up drafting guys like John Havlicek, Satch Sanders, or Don Nelson? What would Bob Cousy playing with Wilt Chamberlain look like? Does Boston even keep Wilt for his whole career? Clearly, the possibilities are endless. Auerbach seemed to have disdain for Chamberlain for the rest of his career. Celtics Hall of Famer Dave Cowens had worn the number 13 when he played at Florida, but when he was drafted by Boston, Auerbach apparently told him, no Celtic is ever going to wear number 13. I guess Malcolm Brogdon doesn't really care though. Was this disdain due to the fact that Chamberlain turned down Red's offer to play for the Celtics, or just out of respect for their tough playoff battles?